Hey everyone, this is Dr. Kanita from ARIA Holistic Pain Management, and I'm here with my fellow colleague and friend, Dr. Liz. She is a yoga teacher and with 2 graduate degrees, and I went to school with Dr. Liz back at New York Chiropractic College, although I think it's called something else now that I can't remember.
Remember it either. Yeah.
Yes, in upstate New York. At the time, I think I remember when I was doing martial arts that you were also teaching yoga. And she also, a long time ago, did a private session with me. And I remember it being amazing. And it was very specific for what I was going through and with all the movements. And I remember really enjoying it. And I kind of fell off. I know yoga is something I actually definitely need in my life, but all the yin stuff because I do a lot of yang things, but
Yeah.
you always avoid the thing you need the most sometimes.
Yeah. My people always need more yang stuff. Excuse me. Yang
Oh, you're
stuff.
good. It's
Yeah.
pronounced either way. It's fine.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I need more yin, and I'm very like outward movement, go do stuff. So, but I've become much better in the past, I would say 3 years at listening to when I need to be more yin, which is
Mm.
important. But my nature is to be very outward movement.
How do you know when you need the yin? What's the sign?
Well, hopefully I don't get to this point, but usually when I get really sick, because
Mm.
typically I'm pretty good at not getting too sick or getting colds, and I can sense that in my body. But when I start to, especially my thoughts change and my body is acting a little differently or having more pain, is when I'm like, okay, let me step back and
Mm.
rest for a while and say no to things.
Mhm.
Um, uh, so yeah, that's kind of my indicator for when I need more yin things. Um, but yeah, so Dr. Liz also reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and I'm really happy to chat with her about kind of like the power of healing ourselves. I forgot what you said. It was in your
Yeah.
newsletter.
I'm interested because you're a clinician too, and you have practice a martial arts your own practice of martial
Hmm.
arts. Wondering if that influences your clinical. Do you feel like it influences your clinical skills?
Absolutely. I know that when we were in school, I remember Sifu Jerry Martin. He's actually really shifted a lot of things in his school too,
Oh,
as he should. I think we always are evolving, but at the time, I was that kung fu was still a little bit more young, and I really didn't get into the Qigong aspect, which is what I learned in the Finger Lakes from my other teachers, the 5 elements Qigong, more gentle movement until later on. And finding that practice really helps kind of myself be more aware of what's going on with my body, where I think you might have written about this too, where this awareness you have, and then when you're aware of what's happening in your body, then with my patients, I can kind of sense that awareness too, or see how much awareness they have in
mm,
their own bodies.
mm.
And funny enough, I know the patients that I have that do yoga have a different experience with acupuncture. in my
Really?
in my in my experience, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
tell me what's different about their experience.
I think they're like, a couple of them will actually, when I do certain points, are like, "Oh, I feel this," and they sense it kind of like coming up the channel, coming down the channel, or they're like, "Ooh, we kind of think about this area in yoga." They have definitely a more sense of what's going on, and it's interesting to see where I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's the channel." I can do one in the foot, and they feel it up in their head, and I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah,
So
I
they're
would
little.
the acupuncturist in the student clinic because I went to the student clinic for acupuncture
Mhm.
times, and they would kind of look at me weird.
You're definitely
One time they put, I don't
talking
remember
to
the
it.
point. It was a gallbladder point. They put
Mhm,
something, a needle in somewhere for a gallbladder
mhm.
point, and then my gallbladder went like it squirted some bile. My gallbladder just moved. Is that a gallbladder point? And they were like, "How do you know?" My gallbladder moved. I felt it.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Or like, it's so interesting because there are like some people who some of my patients who maybe they had like a drinking craziness over the weekend, and then I do a liver point and it's like boom, it lights up and they're like, "What was that point?" I was like, "That was your liver. It's not happy with you right now." And they're like, "I'm never
Less
drinking
party,
again." Yeah.
please.
It was kind of funny, but yeah, with some of the patients that do yoga, they definitely have like the sensation of the movement in the channel. So it's super interesting to kind of see that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
going back, sorry.
No, and the way I teach is actually I want I want to give people the opportunity to start to move with the energy. So that's not
Mm,
even beyond feeling it, but
mhm,
also sensing where the energy would like to move to unwind the tissue and to unwind the channel too.
mm,
I don't know if you feel this way from your perspective, but from yoga perspective, we can use movement um, to unwind the
mhm.
tightness in the tissue or also the energy if the energy is in a pattern that's not optimal.
Yes. I think that goes a lot into, I think, what we're going to talk about with some of the, what I call the chi cultivation exercises
Mm,
in um, health and longevity, that actually they're the best practices are the standing ones.
mm.
And I'm really bad because it's exactly, I'm really obviously right. It's a yin movement. I hate it. But right. So like, Wu Ji, sorry, Wu Ji's down here, but like ball holding is one of them. And like you said, you're actually unwinding the tissue, even though you're looking at yourself, you're not moving, but there's like so much stuff going on
Yes, because
internally.
you can hold the channel
Mhm.
kind of. I don't know if this is how you feel it. What I feel
Mm,
is you hold the channel in its integrity, and it's like a polarity, like a battery.
yes. Yeah. It's yeah, it's so funny. Like I think when people listen to like, I don't these people are weird, but it's like this because I think of the yin yang symbol because there's like this rotational energy of like push pull
Mm.
too.
Yes.
And it's your kind of like your skill like you're trying to make it so your skeleton kind of holds you up. It's my understanding. It might be
Yeah.
wrong too, but like this like buoyancy, right?
Yeah, you can hit something where the way I feel it is the energy holds you.
Mhm.
You're like the skeleton holding you would be a good description of the sensation of it, I think, too. Yeah.
Yeah, from what I heard is because you have like yin and yang muscles. So you're trying to get this where you're just in that neutral, in that, the yin yang, that
Mhm.
line. You're trying to get to that line, like become that line of neutrality.
In yoga, we have Ida and Pingala,
Mm.
which is the will and surrender.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, you're gonna meet Trout.
Hi, Trout. Trout's gonna join us.
Yeah. And then we also have a line like that too, but
Mm.
the Ida and the Pingala go up around
Ah.
this and then meet in the third
Mhm.
eye.
Oh, very cool. Yes, I think, it's all kind of within like the same, like it's all kind of the same thing, right? Whether it be
Yeah.
yoga practice or a chi cultivation or qigong, and even this goes back to your previous question, how it influenced me as a practitioner, because that body alignment too is super important with how I treat, and it's always like I always forget sometimes, and then I come back to it. So it's this constant of, trying to be like 1% better every day, but it's hard.
You mean like your body alignment
Mhm.
when you're putting the needle in.
Yeah, and even doing, the Tui Na, or
Mm.
which stands for the Chinese medical massage, and what you said before about how you can use the movement in yoga to help unwind the tissue. We have, the teacher I learned this from is, Tom Bizzio, and you might have seen his stuff, but we do a specific Tuina called Zangfu Tuina, which is organ regulation, and that's essentially holding the dynamic, because your organs actually have a dynamic too, they're not just sitting there, right? Your organs, your lungs, your heart, your liver even has all these fascial connections. So when we're doing the Zangfu Tuina, like, it's almost like watching paint dry, but, like, there's a lot of stuff happening where you're just, like, holding the tissue and then, like you said, letting it kinda lead you where it wants to go, and then you're just following that.
Mhm.
You can do that a lot with, like, when I do people with neck pain or whiplash, you can do it on the scalenes. Um, the lungs have a movement too. It's super interesting. Like, you don't know until, when I did this with Tom, and he put his hands on me, excuse me, and I was like, "Oh," because then his hands are like, I don't know how to explain it, but he teaches through his energy, his chi.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's super interesting to see, oh, this is what I'm supposed to sense. And then
yes,
it helps when you go into that hold position, then you're unwinding the tissue that way too.
yeah.
Wow, just choked on my
When and we also wanted to talk about breath, and I feel like what you just said about the organs leads really well into breath, because when you
Mhm.
breathe and when you're breathing well, all of your organs are moving through the
Ex
fascia, right? And through the
exactly.
just
Mhm. And our breath, other than, you breathe in and out, but our organs have a different movement. So, like, our lungs aren't just like, that they of course, we can see ourselves breathe, but their movement's, like, all the way down to your feet too.
Mhm.
So that breath is really important to get it all the way down there. But I know you talked about it with me, through your email about, your journey with, healing yourself with breath. I would love to hear
Yeah,
more about it, have you chat about that aspect.
yeah, I wanna get this out there because I it's
Mhm.
kind of out there, but I want other people to know about it. So I had a virus in March of 2020, and it was too early in my area for a test, so I don't know
Mhm.
for sure that it was COVID.
Mhm.
And then I just didn't I got, like, better, but I just didn't really get better. You
Mm.
know, they didn't really it was so early, they didn't really know about long COVID. I mean, we know post-viral syndromes we've known about for a long time.
Mhm.
And so I didn't the doctor was like so I had to figure it out myself, and I
Mm.
also had to do my continuing education credits for
Mhm.
my license, my chiropractic license at the time, and I chose a class on breath. And,
Mhm.
breath is something I thought, like, I knew. I had
Yeah.
it down. I had been practicing yoga for more than a decade at this point. I'd been teaching yoga. I taught my patients and my students
Mhm.
how to breathe. I was like, "I got it." And then when I was in this class on breath, which wasn't necessarily a lot of new information, it was all
Mhm.
information I already knew, but I noticed, "Oh my gosh, I've been breathing through my mouth for, like, 6 months at this point, like, since I was sick."
Mm.
See, like, if you this is kind of a website plug, but it's also, like, genuinely you can see in my publicity photos were taken, right, the spring after
Mm.
I was probably COVID. You can see my scalenes are, like
Wow.
they're, like
Yeah.
veins.
Flexing.
Yeah, like, all of the muscles up here are just, like, so bulky in those pictures because of that, and I realized, "Oh my gosh, like, this is one of the reasons I'm so fatigued," because every
Mm.
breath I had to like, when you're working for every breath and you're
Mhm.
not breathing efficiently, every moment is less vital than it could be,
Mm. Mhm.
and so I started to breathe, um I started to teach myself how to breathe again. And so I the first thing I did was I started to try and train myself to breathe through my nose. And when you haven't breathed through your nose in a long time, your set point in your brainstem can get off for carbon dioxide and oxygen. You know this already, Dr.
Mhm.
Kenny, just for other people.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um,
Review is good.
yeah, so we have a set point that you have sensors in your blood that are tasting the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. And if you're mouth breathing, you have more oxygen than you should in your blood. And so you're kind of blowing off your carbon dioxide.
Mm.
And so when I closed my mouth and started to breathe through my nose, it would feel, because my set point was off and my sensors had just gotten used to the ratio of carbon dioxide and oxygen that was off. And so it would feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get enough air. Like when you feel like you're underwater, I have to get to the top to breathe. It kind of felt like that. And I would just like sit with that feeling just a little bit, and then like a little bit more and a little bit more. And then and I was doing a lot because I was like, I have to get my breathing back. So it took me a couple weeks, but then that panic feelings finally started to fade. And then I started to breathe into the cue I use for people is the back bottom rib cage, and to get the lateral and the posterior movement of the bottom ribs so the diaphragm can drop fully.
Yes.
And then I started to really focus on breathing into the back bottom rib cage. And I knew that, like, before this happened to me, I knew all that, but I had never really practiced it really consciously because I thought, oh, I got it. That's easy. I'm a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
But when I started to practice that, I started to not only be able to notice like my own vitality and what was gaining vitality and what was taken away through my breath and through the changes in my breath, because I was so focused on it. But also, I started to feel, we're talking about feeling the energy. I started to feel my center, my core. In a way that I started to feel like my own personal boundaries. And like you are young and you probably are really good with the boundaries, and like really good with it stops here, And I was opposite. I was like probably could have used some more yang practice at that time, and very like porous and like not
That's
always
a good way to put it. Yeah.
Where I was ending and other people were beginning. And not even always knowing like what do I want? What do I like? I didn't always know. And when I started to really breathe into the back bottom rib cage, I started to feel my core, like the muscles of my core, but also the energetic core. And I liked it. And I wanted to keep the integrity of it and stop dissipating my energy. So noticing what would sort of dissipate it versus what would allow the energy, not in a holding way, not in a way that I'm trying to hoard it, just in a way that it's like the flow and the amount that's for me is a healthy amount. I live in a different state. I wear different clothes. I work online instead of in a clinic. Like my whole life changed.
I love it. It's finding like what you kind of said, what kind of came to mind too in my head, because we have, because I related to Chinese medicine too, and there's what we call kind of the Junction, and there's many translations of it. But it's kind of like an upright chi, and we have the Wei chi, the defensive chi, and I'm trying to think how to explain it, but I kind of know that you get this too in a way, because it all relates. But when we are becoming ourself, or like when we know ourself too, like that core that you're talking about, that you're holding, reminds me of like the dantian, like that's the mother and father, right? And that's our like pre-heaven essence is what we call it, and it's like a template.
Yes.
So when we breathe, and sometimes like, right, sometimes that template, we have that template and the light shines on it. Okay, this is going to get weird. I love this. So the light shines on it and then we can
That's
express
good.
ourselves. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so sometimes when the template is kind of shifted and that light can't shine on it, it's different, or like it's not who we are. And also whatever, other than the breath that we take in, we also ingest food, but it's not like when I eat rice or when I eat whatever, we become rice. We actually become a form of ourselves, right?
Wow.
So when we have that template and you're eating the things and you're breathing in the way you're supposed to, then that forms us in that
Yeah.
moment. If that make yeah, it sounds weird, but like I know you kind of get
No,
that, but you know.
that's exactly it.
Mhm,
Yeah. The other thing that was happening that I think you can relate to me at that time is I had a very high energy dog, a very driven dog named Auggie, who is a red
mhm,
bone coonhound. And he just had a drive that is sort of like you can't really explain to someone like how high his drive was unless you
mhm.
met him.
Yeah.
His drive was so high, and like in order for me to control him and also to control his environment,
Mm,
him safe and to keep other people safe, I had to be able to stop people with my voice before
mhm.
they came into our space, and I also had to be able to stop him
Yeah.
with my voice, you know.
Mhm,
So I had to develop this strong no
mhm.
with him, and he was with me every day, so I had to like it was like
Yeah.
it was like really the universe was like, you're gonna learn this, girl. You're gonna
Mhm.
learn this.
Yeah. I love that too. It's our dogs kind of teach us so much, so many things, and there's trout in the background too.
Hmm.
Um, and I wanted to touch a little bit on something, just because I remember too what I was thinking before I got talking about the template, but the boundaries too. And we have, when our Wei Chi and I wouldn't call it defensive Chi. I don't want to say that, but like our Chi that kind of protects us from the boundaries. And
Yeah.
that lungs play a big role in that. So it's super
Oh,
interesting
wow.
when you finally breathe in, you kind of develop the Wei Chi kind of came back. It was like, this is my boundary. It was like too porous. There's too many things coming in and out. Um, and then you're able to kind of tighten those up once you breathe in correctly.
So how did the lungs play into the boundary?
uh, because the lungs, they have this outward. So I talked a little bit about the organ dynamics. I can call it chi dynamics. So the lungs have this up and out. I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. They have like a more of a downward action, but they're also in charge of the skin and body hair
Mm-hmm.
of the very like the outside, the interstices,
Mm.
the pores. So your lung chi also has to go downward and disseminate, right? It's like a kind of a delicate canopy, as some of the books say. So when to give example, when we kind of ingest food, get exercise, it comes into our bodies. And I explain a lot of like how we eat, like a cooking pot. So when the fire is good, our ministerial fire, which is like our yang, our kidney yang, and our cooking pot's good, and we have enough water, and all the other organs are working, then that energy is steamed up back up into the lungs, into the upper body, to create us, essentially, to create that me that is whoever I am at that moment. um, so when if the steaming up and the downward isn't coming right, and that's part of the lungs, and it might have been other aspects too, we don't know exactly, then that's why it doesn't come up, or it becomes too porous, like you said, like a sponge, if it's you're letting things in too much.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting. But talking about our dogs again, because I always love to talk about our dogs. It's interesting, right? Because you had to learn how to. I remember you writing about this too, like stopping creating. boundaries, creating a boundary to keep you safe, to keep Auggie safe. And I have 2 Ridgebacks and now Weimaraner, and man, it's been so crazy with them too. And they're really good at telling me, they have a way to tell or communicate with me like, "Oh, I don't like this." And you
Mm,
have to listen to that too
yeah.
within ourselves and other people, um, and respecting their boundaries.
Yeah. 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 And I feel like the respecting, like, it was so beautiful, the image you said, and then also with the dogs, the image you said about the blueprint.
Mhm.
And, like, we have to respect our blueprint, and we have to respect the animal's blueprint and the plant's blueprint,
Mhm.
Earth's blueprint, and
Yes.
other people's blueprint, and allow the coming to fruition of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. And I think when the blueprint, like, we each have our own unique set, but we can change it just depending how right we breathe well, how we exercise, how we eat. And now I think of it like a circle. Like, how is the circle moving? Is it moving well? Am I stuck somewhere? And that goes to kind of what you do and what I do as well, is like, where can we I don't know if I want to use optimize, but like, how can we make that blueprint like function the best it can, get the wheels spinning. And for
Yeah.
me, that's the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and something that I did actually, one of the changes I made to heal myself was I stopped teaching yoga in the way I was supposed to and started
Oh,
my heart.
I love that.
And so what my whole goal of the class, like I said earlier, is to create a curious, loving space, and also to empower people with knowledge.
Mhm.
I have a lot of expertise and knowledge about the body and about the practice of yoga and about the human and how those things intersect. But it's offered as a tool. It's not something that is going to, hopefully, if I do it right, impose on someone else. Hopefully, I can give you some tools. I can cultivate this curious, loving space, and also describe what does it feel like when you're following your body's wisdom. What does it feel like?
Mm,
And what's the tipping point? And how can we find the courage to do it? 'Cause I think courage
mm,
is important
mhm.
when you're healing.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna read something that you wrote that I thought was very beautiful. I
Mm,
underlined it. And this goes into what you said, that healing will take a shift in energy in life habits and relationships, and that takes courage and faith that life could be better. I'm curious, and Dr. Liz is curious about what inspires people to make that shift. And I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. Because, it's interesting because, well, I never think things are a coincidence. I'm thinking about something and then something pops up where I'm listening to a podcast or YouTube, and it goes in, and I was just like, literally today, I was listening to something, how that that shift in life habits, and that shift in having more gratitude. There's science now that it literally changes the brain. Like,
mhm,
and I had to remember what podcast it was. It was super interesting because he said that when you're stuck in a specific emotion, whether it be fear or resentfulness or hate, all this negativity, you can't change your brain. Like, you should not make decisions based on that emotion, because you start thinking about past things, and so that makes you not evolve or not have a shift in energy. So it makes sense to us.
yeah. I mean, you can't even see the present if that's
Exactly.
mhm, if you're
Yeah.
stuck in a past emotion, yeah.
So, and not like now that there's like thousands, he said thousands of brain scans that really show that when you get into the state of mind, um, I don't know, that state of mind is kind of hard to explain too, but the gratitude being in the present moment, that's when real magic can happen. Super cool. And I wanted to say something else that kind of came in when you were talking about how you're giving tools to people and you're not teaching yoga in a way that's the way that you've been taught, or like do what I do kind of thing. And there was something that I give credit that Sharon Weisenbaum, where I'm doing like this fellowship with, that I really loved, in terms of, you know, for us as chiropractors, acupuncturists, or Chinese medicine herbalists, like we are supposed to fix people, and or it's our job to fix people, our job to heal them. Actually, it's not really our job. It's And I love this part, is like it's our job to be who we are, who we truly want to be, like to be like it's our job to be true to ourselves. And when we are true to ourselves and being who we are, then it can help everyone else too. So I thought it kind of reminded me of that when you said
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. And there's so much research out there now that the presence of whoever healer, be it a medical doctor or
Mhm,
holistic person or whoever, our presence is so important for someone's healing.
mhm,
Do they resonate with us? Are we loving? Are we listening? Are we receptive? Do they feel safe with us? And sometimes it's not. Safety is sometimes something you can't shift for someone. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't.
mhm,
But for me, it's like I want to line my ducks up so that hopefully as many people as can
mhm,
feel that healing, loving presence.
mhm, mhm. Yes, the health. You also wrote something that health becomes a devotional, loving practice of care and nourishment.
Wow.
Instead
That's
of just well, this is what you wrote. This is amazing.
I wrote that?
Yeah, you wrote that.
Oh, funny.
It is like that though. It's just like this loving yourself in a way, and you're not just like you said, not just like because you do it, but it's a way to like show care. Like this is actual self-care, right? This is
Yeah.
I know self-care has been thrown around a lot. But it can be kind of taken out of context, I think, where you're just like, I'm just gonna buy all these things, and you don't think about it's not really self-care.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I actually feel gratitude. I agree. I think gratitude is so important. And I feel like for me, it it really at that time when I was so sick and kind of
Mhm.
hopeless.
Mhm.
And I just like breathing was uncomfortable, everything was uncomfortable. I was in a lot of pain and I was so fatigued. Like sometimes it would be hard to like walk across the room. But and like and it was kind of like I could see like, okay, like I could keep doing what I've been doing. I could keep doing my life the way I've been doing it, which is kind of like pleasing other people, withstanding stuff, doing it the right
Mm.
way. Or I could make a shift. And this road that I'm going down, like this, I'm at this is the path that I'm on, this pleasing other people, and that has landed me here.
Yes.
And or I might be able to make a big shift. And one of the other things along with breath was gratitude, but it wasn't a something that I practiced from my own will. It was something that arose. It
Mm.
was it was like a welling up,
Mm.
like through, I kind of said, okay, universe, energy, whoever, you know, mess my life up.
Mhm.
Like, let's see where I'm this path is leading to death.
Mhm. Yes.
Really. And I'm going to try, I'm willing to try something else, take it.
Mhm.
And one of the first things that arose out of that moment was this sense of, I hear it like a song in my head, like,
Mm,
thank. And it's not about circumstance. It's
mhm,
about, and this is gonna sound kind of cheesy, but it's about, like, gravity. Like, I'm connected to the earth through my body.
mhm,
It's about the air I'm breathing. It's about being.
mm,
And from that sort of sense of being, that sense of connectedness, of welling up of gratitude arises. And it sort of it welled up within me at that, like, really dark time.
mm,
And then it's kind of similar to like an energy like, where the stomach meridian is, and you can tap on it or you can tap into it.
mhm.
I kind of like, from that time, I know where the gratitude flow is, and I can kind of go, okay, now I'm in it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I at that time, you were ready for that shift, so, like, you kinda realize that, which it's yeah, that brings back to our previous point of awareness too. You're like, "Okay, this is not working. This is leading me to something that I do not like, so let's just sit here." And it's really hard for people to sit there in a very uncomfortable state to, find that gratitude and find that, like, for you is that song, but, it's like that spark, I guess.
Mm.
And kind of like, "Oh, okay." Um, so yeah, that's cool. That's I have to sit with that for a minute. I loved hearing all that, but it makes me think about too about, like, I haven't been in practice that long, and I changed a lot of things. Um, and it definitely wasn't easy, and there was times where it's just like you do wanna give up,
Mhm.
but, like, coming back to the gratitude and coming back to, like, now I'm gonna sound cheesy too, where it's like, I'm just so thankful for my body for being here, you know? Something as simple as that can kinda spark a shift or so,
Yeah,
thank
and the
thank you for
blueprint,
sharing that.
who
Yes.
you are, and
Mhm.
the weirdness and the quirks and, the whole line of evolution that led to Dr.
Mhm.
Kinney.
The ancestral
Mhm.
powers of all that. There's another thought I had. Oh, my dogs are trying to break in. This would be something interesting. I do have, like, one question to going back to the breathing, just so the listeners to kind of think about this. Like, how would you talked a little bit about feeling in the back of your ribs. How would you kind of train that breathing for someone?
Yeah. So, would you wanna just do it together?
Yeah, let's do it together.
So the first thing I have people do, and you already know where this is, but is have people find their diaphragm. So
Mhm.
find the bottom of your ribs, and then find the soft part of your belly. And
Mhm.
if you're comfortable, you can curl your fingers under your ribs a little bit, or you can just feel.
Mhm.
And then if you have the flexibility to work your hands all the way around and feel
Mhm.
your back bottom rib cage, you can also cross an arm over and then cross an arm over. You can also lean back against
Mm.
a back of a chair or a wall
Mhm.
or lay down and see if you can
Mhm.
feel the back bottom rib cage. If you're someone who putting your hands back behind you is not right for you.
Mhm.
And so if you can rest your hands there at the back bottom rib cage, rest them. And with your curious, loving attention, see if you can invite that area to move. So you're not forcing it. This would be a more yin
Mhm. Yes, my
practice.
nemesis.
And it's kind of like when you breathe into your belly and your belly goes out, but it's a
Mhm.
smaller movement. And then as the ribs move back and out, you might also feel your belly go out. You might also feel your pelvic floor drop. And so the whole body really, but the parts that people can usually feel at the beginning are back bottom rib cage expanding. And the back bottom rib cage, I don't know about you, but I find that's an area that people are often stuck.
Oh yeah.
And like even yoga teachers, even singers, their ribs are not doing this in the back bottom rib cage.
I wonder it's just all the Qigong I do that I'm like, oh, I definitely feel it move.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
That's the Dantian, baby.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And that's really it. And then I teach people, like, then we usually stand up or on all fours. I have people pelvises around.
Yeah, cool.
Figure out, feel, where can I situate my pelvis in relation to my rib cage in a place that feels strong in my belly. And then we might, like if I'm working with farmers, we might go get the bags of feed and start lifting bags of feed with the breath.
Oh, that's cool.
They can like link up motion with the breath, and that sort of new way of moving can get practical instantly. If it's a yoga class, then we'll start. I usually have people start to allow the breath to move their body. So sometimes people can like immediately tap into that, and they might have movement that immediately arises. And sometimes people will just start to kind of wiggle or rock a little bit. And oftentimes, like when they're breathing in that way and they're finally moving their ribs well and their diaphragm is dropping, they'll find other areas of their body that are stuck that they really like, oh, I got to move that too. Or maybe it's a different area.
That's definitely what I feel. It's like, ooh, this is like little muscles in my spine that aren't happy with me.
And the other thing I like to talk about is the core. We think about the core as, well, probably not you, but average, we've been taught that it's like, we got to have a strong core. And that's true. But what the core is doing is controlling pressure and controlling force moving through the body. And so the diaphragm and the pelvic floor need to be moving together. And that's not something we have to like think about and do. It's just something that will arise if you let it. And if you're kind of letting yourself play with, that's why we play with the pelvis position and find a good core. And then we might also play with, and forgive me, because I'm going to butcher this, but we might play with like throwing some punches and things.
Yeah. Because I love that.
And I say like, like Serena Williams, and you're playing tennis too. Serena Williams or a martial artist will sometimes make sound. And that's part of the reason they're doing that is because they're controlling force, controlling the pressure in their core. And you might have more you want to say about that because you do both those things.
Yes, so important. I actually think of tennis as like martial arts. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going from like horse stance to bone hand stance and all that, and finding that it's like very yin and yang to me, the way like the ball moves. It's like you kind of like feel the force come here and you're like, okay, how can I take it and push it back, right?
Oh, cool.
So it's like, yeah, this movement, tennis is really fun. I think one of the funnest sports, not only because of like the fitness, but just everything is a mental thing, but like your mental state has to be so strong, and especially in singles. And in relation to the core with that, it's even more important to get, and like I really loved how you said that the diaphragm and the pelvic floor have to be in this alignment of, okay, now I'm like twisted, like, and I love how you said you played around with it, because like, can you create that force while in this rotational movement and then let the power come out. Then you're shifting your dantian, your core, so you can let the power out of your hand.
Yeah.
And if there's a disconnect, for me at least, I was having a lot of issues with tennis elbow. So I knew that there was a disconnect between this and that. So where it was like it was just like shocking it. And a lot of it's actually up here. So something I'm working on, like even when I was doing that, I felt everything in this.
Let's add, this is advanced, and you probably already know, you might already know this already, but then I add the roof of the mouth or the back
Okay.
top of the throat,
Mm-hmm.
the soft palate.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's as if you could breathe through the back top of your throat, the back bottom rib cage, and the pelvic floor at the same time, like as if the breath was going to all three spots. Because you can control the pressure with your glottis, right? Or you can control the pressure with your So
yeah,
I want to wiggle my jaw when I do that.
Just to let you guys know, I'm kind of like playing with actually this in my neck too, like just feeling if I shift this.
And then you can let your whatever wants to move. When you, and your tissue might unwind.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, we should do a live class. But yeah, I love kind of how you say you play with things. You're not, of course, you teach yoga, right? You're a teacher of yoga, but you're not like saying you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. Play around with it.
I use poses sometimes, but people get lots of options. If there's a prescribed pose, there's no one prescribed pose. It will be like, we're going to do a lunge. Here's 5 different options for it. You pick the one. But then there's also parts that are spontaneous, where people and people sometimes freak out in the spontaneous parts because they're kind of like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And it's like,
they freak out. Those are the type A people. That's me. I'm like, what? I'm panicking. I don't know. Just tell me what to do. Those are your type A. There was something else that I wanted to mention before. We're almost out of time, but there is, and I think I spoke about it a couple times, like seasonal Qigong, and speaking about like how with breath too, in some of the seasonal Qigongs, when you do, the season changes at different times. So there's like nodes, specific seasonal nodes. And then on those nodes, you do a meditation practice on a specific spinal area. And let me tell you, there was one, I think it was actually when it was switching to either fall or spring. And I did this seasonal node in the, it's from Tom's book too, where you focus on a vertebrae and you think of it lighting up essentially. So you're trying to breathe into that, the same kind of concept that you said, breathing into the ribcage area, but also thinking about that light in that vertebrae. Let me tell you, there's some weird stuff that happened when I did that, because I think what happens is that you just open up, some energy, and you're like, I'm having some craziness right now, where I was just like seeing all these things.
Oh, cool.
Where was I going with this?
Because you're not just aligning in your body, you're aligning with the weather.
Yes.
So you're aligning beyond your own system.
So that cosmic energy, that's what I want to say, that connection, right? All the way. And people are like, these people are weird. But let me tell you, if you do it and you're just like, what did I just do? And, I'm not good at meditation that much. Yeah, I don't do it that much. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And you do it for 5 minutes. It's not that long. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You do it for like, see, even I forgot, but like a specific number of breaths. And you just focus on that vertebrae. And then there's a like Dalian exercises where you're going with the alignment and you're doing those organs to help stimulate it. That's super interesting too, to me. I mean, I'm fascinated by all these kind of classical ways of how they kind of promote a longevity. Because back in the good old days, they lived until 100. Those people who did, and that was like long time ago before we developed like medicine, all that stuff. Um, so there's something to it, right? There's something to breath and that connection, finding yourself through that too. Uh, so all that's, I could talk about that forever. And I'm still on this journey to get better at it too. It's tough though. It's like doing it. I don't know what like you do, Dr. Liz, or what you tell your students. Do you kind of tell them like, okay, you feel like doing yoga today, you should do it, or kind of listen to your body, or how do you kind of have a practice that is helpful for you?
What I do is probably different from average. I do an hour of meditation every day.
Nice.
And there sometimes is spontaneous movement in the meditation. Sometimes it's still.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also, hike and walk my dog and weightlift, because at a certain point, my yoga practice became very subtle.
Mm.
So it is physical, but it's not so physical. So I need to do other physical things. And then for students, when I'm teaching, what I want is like I have 3 classes a week, so people could come to all 3 classes. But what I really want is like to be a resource for people,
Mm-hmm.
and then go back and take their local yoga class too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the price is priced in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 2 or 3 times a week is awesome. I also think weightlifting and more yang practices are a good balance.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying for yourself, you need that balance. And I think, sometimes, especially for modern people, so much yoga, you need to balance it with a little
Punch. Yeah. No, yeah, I was, you know, especially in this society, right? Or the culture is like this, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to eat this, meditate, sleep, go out, and there's so many things. And I think to feel less overwhelmed, it's like, okay, like for me, I'm doing actually Bagua Jang now. So it is still martial arts with a lot of Qigong, standing stuff I hate, but necessary, necessary for me. And I was getting really overwhelmed with like, oh my God, I have to stand for this amount of time and that. But I kind of just like, and my good friend Wes, he's an amazing martial artist practitioner too. He did it like the hardcore way back in the day. Um, but he helped me kind of like, okay, Dr. Kina, you can just tell me when you're gonna do it, and I'll just remind you. You don't have to do it every day, but let's just do one thing. For me, it was like the Chi Ji, so the 6 cultivation exercises. He's like, just do that. And then some of these other, it's called mud stepping. That's kind of this kind of slow walking in a way, which is very powerful indeed as well in terms of fixing a lot of alignment issues in your lower body and neck. And so that helped me a lot where I can, I have the tennis and then I have this. And then, like you, I have to walk my dogs a lot. So that is very helpful for me. I'm outside, my dogs get exercises as well. But you don't have to do something every day to get benefit. I think just getting intentional and being like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this one exercise for like 5 minutes or something like that. Right.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, the exercise is connecting us to our blueprint, connecting us
Yes.
to the own inner light,
Mm-hmm.
and always thinking of the practice or the exercise as that's its place.
I
We're
love that.
not there for the exercise is there for us.
Beautifully said, Dr. Liz. Yeah, I have to one day show you the stepping, because
Yeah.
it's like with you, and it's what you said. You're in a stance and you're actually balancing the diaphragm with the pelvic floor, and now you're shifting your feet in a way that it's slow and it's intentional, but holy moly, does that like fix a lot of knee issues? Because
Yeah.
I was feeling it a lot in my knees. So it also tells you where some blockages are or some tightness in the body. So it's simultaneously, that's the beautiful thing about something Qigong. It's like
Yeah.
it will simultaneously diagnose you and treat you at the same time.
Yeah. Yoga too. Same. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
yoga does like same thing. It was diagnose and treat you. I mean, it's the best thing.
yeah. And it's like boop. It's like the
Yep.
diagnosis and treatment is like boop
Whoop.
once.
Yes. I love it. But sadly, I think we are out of time today. We had a great conversation about power breath, the power of healing. I hope maybe one day we can kind of do something live. Some
Yeah.
more people can join about, and we can just do me where we're like, okay, let's focus on this and how you kind
I
of
love
do
that.
the yoga practice. I think that would be fun to kind of see people, and they can hear it too. Like, so, because I know you're very good. You did recordings for me before where they can follow you just through your voice. Um, that'd be kind of fun. But again, thank you, Dr. Liz, for joining me in this conversation today.
Thank you,
Um,
Dr. Kanita.
yes. So I hope you will join me next time. And I will talk to all you guys later.
All right.